Okay, all right. Let's talk about the circle of fifths. All right. I've got a keyboard here, and there is one note called C, and this is, I think, middle C, right here. This is one octave up. Nice thing about the C scale is that, if you wanted to play a melody in that scale, you don't have to use any of the black notes. You just use the white notes, and that's called the C major scale. Kids learn how to play music using the C major scale. Stuff like that. It's one of the happy scales that Angela was saying. No, she likes stuff a little bit like sadder. And there are scales like the C minor scale, which sounds a little bit sadder than. But the whole idea is that in most Western music, they're written to some scale and or to say some key. They may be written in the E minor scale, and then the bass chord will be, for instance, or the A minor scale. So you could probably make an Italo disco track just with those three chords right there, right? Those are all in the A minor scale. The circle of the fifths is basically just looking at, for every note, if we go up five notes from there, that's the fifth of C, and that happens to be the G note. So if this is the C chord, the G chord sounds like this. So it's C, E, G, G, B, D. So the nice thing about the scale from to is that it actually shares a lot of the same notes, even though there are different notes. If I were to make a song in, say, G major, it will use a lot of the same notes as C major. I think you only get an F sharp. That's the G scale, whereas the C scale is. So we've gone from C, let's call it our tonic. Let's call it 12 o'clock. All right, and then now we go over to 1 o'clock. We've just gone over to the next dial of the clock, and that's the fifth. Similarly, you can also say, all right, so what is C the fifth of some other chord? And it is. It's actually the fifth of the F major scale, which is almost all of the same notes that you will see in the C major scale, except for one. There's one that's slightly flat. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's C, and that's G, and so on and so forth. So you just repeat this process all around the clock, and you get every single note that you find on the piano keyboard, but not arranged in the way that I just played it. It's not arranged in a sequential order. They're arranged in fifths. And on every single, say you've got a song that's in A, and you switch to a song that's, in D or in E. So you can see, so they're both around the 3 o'clock position, right? So we've got the 2 and the 4 o'clock position, D, A, and E. That means all those songs share many, many, many notes in common. And so if you were to actually go from one of these songs to the next song, the chances that these two overlapping songs would sound okay is pretty high because they're not using many, many different notes. At least that's the theory of the circle of fifths. And if we just sort of like a 2-layer circle of fifths, and we label all of the major scales with capital letters, so the C major and C minor, right? We can actually rotate these guys around a little bit and pair up what relative majors go with which relative minors, which are basically minor scales that use exactly the same notes as the major scale. So the C major scale is, the A minor scale is, it's exactly the same notes. I just start at a different point. I'm just hitting all the white notes on the keyboard there. They all use the same exact notes. So going from something like C major to A minor, the little a at the top of the screen, to the capital C down below, I'm using exactly the same notes. I'm just starting from a different place. And that's another part of the theory, which is if you went from the same relative major to the same relative minor, or vice versa, that should work. That could be a good mix. In fact, songs do that within themselves all the time. Okay, let me see. So this is A minor. This is C. This is F. This is G. Let's see. What song would use those chords? Whispering. I can't even sing that high. Whispering words of wisdom, let it be. That's the Beatles right there, right? So they use these relative majors and minors inside their own construction. So it should work if you're doing it as a mix as well. This particular arrangement with the C and the A being, right on top, and that if we count that as 1 and then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, then we get this thing called open key notation, which if anyone uses Tractor, you might have seen this before. It's pretty popular in German-speaking countries, and you can see they use M to describe minor keys and D to describe major keys. The D stands for Dur, which I assume means something in German. But the funny thing about this particular arrangement is that, yeah, it's 1, 2, 3, but it doesn't have the 12 at the 12 o'clock position. It has the 12 at 11 o'clock position. And it's really designed more for music software. It's a way to encode, something in the metadata of a file, saying that, this song's in a particular key. Computers can read this pretty easily, and it's a way to sort of like tag a MP3 file or WAV file or AIFF file with a particular key. Now, if we rotate things around instead and put the E at 12 o'clock position, why would anyone put the E in a 12 o'clock position? I don't know. Must be a guitarist, because the guitar has the E string as the lowest note. It's like that's as long as it goes. I never got a good explanation why you would want the E in 12 o'clock position, but say we rearrange that and we call that 12 o'clock, and we actually make it the positions and of the hands of a clock. We get another system called the Camelot system. Exactly the same concept, rotated a couple of degrees. That's all it is. It's the same thing. This one, on the other hand, is much more popular among DJs. And you've probably seen this in Rekordbox. If you see alphanumeric key notation, this is what it is. Serato uses this natively as well. In fact, Serato uses this particular color scheme, which of course has nothing to do with the actual music, but it's a cute color scheme. And they'll use A, capital A, for minor keys, because this is very popular among DJs, because not all dance music, but so much dance music, majority of dance music is in minor key. So all right, we're just going to assume that's the default. The default is minor key. Major, which is what all kids learn how to play when they're first learning the musical instrument. The major might be the easier thing to learn, but most dance music is not actually in major keys. Therefore, we're going to call that B. It's still included in the system. We're not throwing it out, but we're giving that like secondary citizen status or something. And they give them these 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock positions. Who actually printed out the Camelot Wheel? You did, yeah. So did you find it useful to actually have this wheel? Yeah. Just to be able to sort of like see. But the nice thing about having this numbering system is that if you have, say, your entire DJ library all encoded with alphanumeric, you may not need to have the sheet of paper with you because they're going from 1 to 2.
Does that, unfortunately. So that's why I had the sheet that had both things on it.
Right.
I had to go back and forth.
Right. So check your DJ Pro settings to see if they have an alphanumeric setting, because even if you have it encoded in D flat major or something like that, it's actually a lot of DJ software now can just read both and can flip between the two representations. Rekordbox can definitely do that. I think Serato can do that too. So if you've got stuff in A minor, C, D, and you can flip it to 8A, 8B, mode. And then the idea is that you should be able to jump around the circle of fifths without having to look at a chart. You're just going from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock, or 1 o'clock to 12 o'clock, 12 o'clock to 11 o'clock. You know how to read the clock, you know how all of that relates, and you can make those connections. So what I want to do is see whether we can actually play some music.
How often would you say that you're mixing in key versus like
When I'm planning the playlist, I use it all the time. When I'm actually mixing in front of an audience, it depends on what problem I'm trying to solve. Really, mixing in key is kind of one of those. I know I can already match the beats. I know that these two songs, energy-wise, kind of already match. I just want to be able to make this blend a little bit smoother. And there might be a bunch of different reasons why you want to do that. I mostly use it when I'm trying to sneak in a new genre without the audience noticing. So it's like I'm playing R&B in A minor or something, and I want to get into reggaeton or something like that. If that next track was the same tempo and the same key as my R&B track, people don't even necessarily realize that I've just mixed into a new track. They think it's a remix or something like that. And all of a sudden, I'm in my reggaeton crates, and I can mix out of that. I can jump from keys to keys once I'm within a certain genre. That's one reason why you might want to do it. So let's see. Let's pick something that's pretty somewhere in the middle. You know what? I'm just going to rearrange these things by key, which will be easy. Most simple key mix, it will be just going to the same key. So I've got an 8A song. I've got an 8A song on the left. I'm going to put in an 8A song on the right. Make sure it's beat matched. The song is really fast. There we go. Okay. So exactly the same key. They're both in A minor, 8A. And for a lot of people who've who may not be familiar with either song, they don't even realize it's two different songs. Right, it's the same key. There's actually some instruments that are similar between the two. They both have kind of like vibraphones in them. So that's like the easiest transition. So let's go back to that instrumental track. And now I'm going to try to jump to a song that's in C instead. Remember, C is the relative major of A minor. It is a different chord. You're actually hearing both songs have melodies going on right now. One of them is more chords. The one I'm bringing in has more chords. It's a little bit happier, but it is in the key of C. All right, so that's the only problem is I only have one 8B song in this, so I'm just going to go back. All right, now let's try going around the circle of fifths instead. We're going to go clockwise this time, so from 8A to 9A. People know Daft Punk, right? Not quite. They are different keys, but not terrible. So you can blend those together, but it's not like, you probably don't want to do like super long blends. You can do things like, I'm just going to use that one chord right at the beginning of the song, for instance. I'm going to start the song again. Okay. That works. And because it's a loop, I know the chord isn't changing on the Daft Punk song. The Daft Punk song has several different chords in the scale. I know this one chord works really, really well with the song I want to bring in. And now I've just done the opposite. I've gone from 9A back to 8A. And you know, that's why it sounds like going counterclockwise around the circle of fifths. So that's basic harmonic mixing right there. Let me switch back to my presentation. Any questions so far about this basic idea?
Do diagonals work as well?
Say what?
So like 12B to 11A, for example.
Yeah, okay. So let me get to that because you can, but it doesn't always work. I mean, already we were, so sorry, I talked about major and minor, and relative major and relative minor. So from 12A to 12B, that's fine. Diagonals gets into this idea called fuzzy key mixing. So this is what most harmonic mixing is. Sorry. So basically, if you're in 12A, can you go up to 1B? Or 12A, can you go up to 11B, right? If you're in 12B, can you go to 11A, that sort of thing. And there is actually a school of thought that says, yes, give it a try, but always check on your headphones first. Because it could do weird things in the particular combination of the energy levels as well as the notes themselves. The notes themselves may match up, but they don't make sort of like any musical sense on like, why are you using, you know, this particular chord from one scale with this particular chord from this other scale on top of each other. Sometimes it works, especially if the song has a lot of different chords and not just one chord throughout the entire track. A lot of house and techno tracks are just one chord for the entire song. but some of them aren't. Some of them have like, have some fairly complicated chord progressions. If you're not isolating that one chord by using loops or something like that, it's a bit of a riskier affair. So give it a try in your headphones. And if it doesn't work in your headphones, then it's not going to work out there. And then you do a fast transition rather than you do a blend. You cut things over. All of these harmonic mixing things only really make sense if you're doing blends. If you're doing situations where you have two songs playing on top of each other. If you're just going from, the end of the fourth beat on one song to the first beat of the next song, and you're doing a hard cut, it doesn't matter that they were in different keys. It's fine. However, there is one that actually does work, which is where you go from the major clockwise to the next minor. And there's this thing called the diatonic mediant, and I just Googled that today. So don't ask me what it means, but I can tell you what it sounds like. So, if I was going,
I think in your other recording, someone a person said it had to do with the third. Some sort of minor third.
It is the third. It is in fact the third. So it's like if I was going from C, and then I went to a song that used E minor. So it's the third, 1, 2, 3, but I'm going from a major scale to a minor scale. That works. For some reason, that works more often than any other sort of diagonal movement that I've tried. In general, what you want to be doing is say if you're playing, something in 12B, you kind of want to be either going sideways or you want to be going to the same relative minor. If you're in 12A, then you want to either go flip that over to the major, to the same relative major, or you go sideways to a different minor chord. This is relatively safe. Getting into fuzzy key mixing where you sort of broaden out, test it out. There is a chance it could work, especially if you're using really tight loops. They're just blending tight loops on top of each other because the song isn't going anywhere. The song is just doing its thing over and over and over and over again. And so you don't have to be worried that, okay, it sounds nice now, but 2 bars later, it sounds terrible, right? You don't have to worry about that. They're playing the same bar over and over and over again. So let's actually try this. Let's see what that sounds like, right? So if we had, what was that one? I have one song in here that's a major chord. So from 8B to 9A. Wow, I already have it queued up actually. How nice. Yeah, those work. Those were the same. They shared enough notes in common with each other, and they really do. It's like the C major scale, the E minor scale. Is that right? Is that the E minor scale? I think so. I think that's E minor scale. There's only one note difference there. Again, so relatively similar, even though they're not exactly the same scale. So that probably explains why that works. Okay. And just, in case you're thinking about what does that look like in terms of the clock? You're going from the major to the minor. You're not going from minor to major. You're not going outwards in this clock diagram. You're always coming back to minors in this sort of diatonic median thing. The other thing to keep in mind, though, is that there are effects, even if you're doing a hard cut between keys, there are effects that you can get by just doing a hard cut between notes that are related in a different way. So the most obvious one is that you're going from one song to a new key that's only slightly higher. it's like the singers just like got extra energy, especially in the vocal song. A lot of soul songs, they just do this naturally in the music anyway. It's like they'll sing the chorus and then they'll sing the same chorus only one key higher, right, or half a key higher. And that's called modulation in music performance. That's what singers, that's what composers and arrangers won't normally do if they want to sort of increase the energy anyway. And that's something that you can do yourself. This only goes one direction though. This only goes up. You going down really doesn't have this effect. It can still work in the mix. It just doesn't necessarily have that boosted energy effect where where the audience can actually hear. You just went up a pitch. You just went higher. And that could be going from C, as I said, C to D, or C to C sharp. C sharp is so from C. It just sounds like the audience can actually hear that you just went up a little bit. The only problem is that and of course from C sharp you can go up to D as well, which is going from to. Here's another semitone out. The only problem is that the numbers don't help very much. The Camelot wheel was never designed for this. Where in fact, what you have to do is you have to either add +2 or -5 to whatever number, and more accurately, it's something like that, because you're going around a clock. So you're either moving clockwise by 2 notches, or you're going back by -5, but you take into account that a clock is modulo 12 + 1. So it's actually pretty annoying, but it sort of does make sense. If you're going from 8A, you can go up to 10A, and that's exactly going from this to this. All right. So you're going 2 steps instead of 1. We already knew we could go up 1 step. Now we're just saying we can also go up 2 steps. Two steps is absolutely fine. Or we can go to the complete opposite side of that. So like in between those 2 steps and on the opposite side, and go to 3A, which will be going from we'll be going from this to this. All right, we're just going up 1 semitone. And then from that semitone, you can go, you can go up to there again. So here's an exercise. If we have a song in 2A, what are the two keys that we could modulate to?
4A or
4A or 9A? Yeah, absolutely. So we could go to 4A. We could go over to 9A. This is the sort of thing where it actually does help to have the circle printed out in front of you, or at least a clock that's in front of you somehow, because to be able to visualize how things are working. However, what I find is that this is actually tremendously easy if you actually do still have your the letter representation of your song. So going from like E minor, so say actually going from A minor. Let's say from A minor, if we wanted to go up by a whole key, we go from A to B, A minor, B minor. And if I just scroll, I'll find all my B minor songs there. Great, that's relatively easy. I want to go from a semitone that's A minor to B flat minor. So, okay, I'm going to scroll and see if I have any B flat minor songs. I do not think I have any B flat minor songs. No, here they are, B flat minor songs. So there's actually a case to be made for maybe you actually still want to have your actual, the actual Roman representation of the keys, because it makes modulation go really easy. And I use modulation a lot. Because it really, really broadens the range of different kinds of tonal transitions that you can make. You're no longer just stuck with, okay, only the songs in the adjacent fifths, only the songs that have the same relative major or the same relative minor. Now I'm broadening it out to, I can just hop around the circle, especially if I know I want to get in a particular place. So if I know this next, 2 songs from now, I want to play A minor song, But right now I'm playing somewhere in well, A minor is 8A, by the way. So I'm playing 8A right now, but right now I'm somewhere in 1A, 2A land. You know, how do I get there quickly? It's like I'm going to modulate. I'm going to modulate by a semitone, get me in the vicinity of 8A, and then I can just do a nice harmonic transition from there. Now this tends to be something that I only do when I'm doing a plan set, which is usually what I'm doing for live streams, or if I'm going to do it for an opening for my night, like Angela said, you have a plan, you come into the plan, and then like 3 songs in, the plan's gone out the window, right? But at least for those first 3 songs, your plan's still intact. You can still try out the songs that you actually have planned to play in the first place, and see what the audience reaction is. To that end, one thing that I do is I try to make sure that my first couple of songs includes a little bit of everything that I'm playing to play for that night, just to be able to gauge initial reaction. It's like, okay, I'm going to play a Spanish track. Let's see what the audience, how the audience reacts to this. I'm going to play something in Hindi, see what the audience see how the audience reacts. I'm going to play a hip hop track. I'm going to play a house track, and then I figure out how to make that work musically, and then I can gauge everybody's reaction. It's like, okay, people are bobbing their heads to this, but not to that. I'm usually playing a warm-up set, so it's right at the beginning of the night. Everyone's still kind of warming up. They're not really going to be dancing right at the beginning. But I can already start to see, all right, right now for the next hour or so, this is the audience I've got. And then I can sort of lean more heavily into how people are reacting. So it's like, okay, people seem to be into the hip-hop. I'm going to just play more hip-hop for a while until, I see evidence that maybe I shouldn't be doing that, or if I see people getting tired and wanting to change, right? And then already have more information. So there is some value in sort of planning out the sets. But yeah, like Angela said, expect that plan to go out the window, once you've got real data from your audience, once you've actually seen your audience and seen how they're reacting, which songs are starting to work, and more importantly, which songs are not working, and then you can adjust your plan on the fly. On certain controllers, you actually have buttons to change the key of your song. And all DJ software nowadays, they have those same buttons on screen. So you could also use your mouse to be able to change. So if a certain song is in the wrong key, you can go ahead and just say, well, if I just moved it up by a semitone, maybe it will match up. In Rekordbox, you will see the keys turn blue if they're actually incompatible keys. So if they obey that basic harmonic mixing, either it's just a fifth away or it's a relative major and minor, the keys will actually turn blue. Of course, if it's the same key, it will also be blue. So you can actually just like go up and down in keys and see how that works. You can see right now I've got an 8B and a 9A, and they're blue, right? So if I loaded something that was like completely different, like that, 8B, 4A, doesn't work. They don't match. So I can move this around. Oh, look, if I just move this by 1 semitone down, it could work. So that's another thing that's kind of neat. You can actually just sort of play around with that, especially when you're preparing, when you're preparing stuff ahead of time. You have all the time in the world to sort of try out these ideas. And now I'm really curious, what does this even sound like if I actually did this mix? Well, it's drums. Mostly drums though, I think. Yeah. You can hear the reach out and yeah, it works. Yeah, it sounds like they're actually in the same key. They're not exactly. They are one of those diagonals that we just talked about, going from 8B to 9A. It was that median third thing that we just talked about.
So if it is a song though that is progressing, is it it's just gonna change all the keys at that point?
I think every time you load in a new song, it resets back to its original
But
key.
I mean, like in the song,
Oh, yeah.
it's moving around. Everything's gonna get moved to what you said.
Yes. Everything gets transposed from one key to this new key. So if your song was originally in C, and then you transposed it up by 2 semitones, you will get D. And all of the other chords similarly adjust, just to just to make that song make sense, and it works pretty well. In fact, I wonder whether we could show an example of that. So let me see. Let me rearrange the song.
Do you have a Beatles song you were showing us earlier?
I do have some Beatles songs. Do you have a particular Beatles song? I'm not sure if I have it in my record box collection, but I can. And I just transpose it up a semitone. People know this song? Okay. That's a semitone. It seems a bit high for John, but. All right, maybe that's too much. Let's try going down. That doesn't sound like John anymore, but it sounds like it could be a British rocker. This is like Bowie's register.
Like cover bands.
Yeah, exactly. So the thing about it though is that remember that when we're talking about originally when people were mixing in vinyl, music will go up and down by half semitones and even like microtones all the time because they were using the pitch fader all the time. So very, very few records were actually being played in the original speed. In fact, a lot of records are not released at the same speed they were recorded in, because the band just decided the song will actually be sound better if it was just 5% faster or something like that. So they recorded it at one speed and then they play it back at another speed. There's a couple of house tracks that were what's it? Marshall Jefferson, who has this incredible piano piece, the House Music Anthem. Here we go. This song. Is it not playing? Oh, I've got to switch to 12. So this song, he recorded this song at half speed so that he could actually play this keyboard part because he's not a trained piano player. And then he released it at the same song at twice the speed. So he was recording this at like I can't even go minus 50% on this controller. Actually, I wonder what would happen if I went to internal mode and just type in 60 BPM. No, it's not gonna let me do that. Anyway, so it's a music production type thing. Of course, nowadays it's easy because with MIDI you can actually record at the pitch that you want, and then and then just speed up the rate at which the computer sends those commands out back to your musical instruments. I don't know if that's what Marshall Jefferson did, but I know that for people in the 60s and the 70s, they use this trick all the time. It's like, we're just going to record one octave lower, and then we're going to play it back one octave higher, just twice the speed. And it's going to sound like we're incredibly virtuistic, and it's like, nope, it's but it works. It audibly works.